a right to bear arms. Recently, the news has been filled with somewhat seemingly similar trending topic. Within the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, what we have seen is the trend of men of great authority and power having to step down. And we can sit and act sanctimonious at church as if you haven't been a part of the conversation. But there are many people who spend a lot of time, energy, and effort talking about how it happened and why it happened and what you thought happened when you weren't anywhere near what happened. And the problem becomes we spend more time talking about the problem than we do offering a solution. Because you have got to recognize it's more important that the people step up with them than for them to have to step down for themselves. And my brothers and sisters, we all have got to be honest about it, is if you hadn't had people in your life, if you hadn't had people that were there to help you when you were down to nothing, when you didn't know which way you were going to go, if you didn't have a support system behind you and people that were there to encourage you along the way, you would have stepped down a long time ago. And just because you don't have a position of power doesn't mean you didn't have something you could have stepped down from. I'm talking to all the ones that you have saved your family, you have been there for your family, and you felt like your family could only depend on you, but you encounter some things that you thought to yourself, I can't stay where I am and help my family. I'm talking to some people that you were the one on your job that carried the load and everybody depended on you, and there was a point in your life where you didn't think you could go forward, and you thought to yourself, this is too much for me to bear, and felt like giving up, but somebody came to your rescue. Come to talk to some people that recognize that it doesn't matter how high people may get, because everybody needs somebody sometime. Do I have any help in the house? Doesn't matter what position, what posture you have in life, everybody needs somebody that you can lean on and you can depend on. Isn't it good to know that you got a circle of people that know, here it is, you don't even have to say what's wrong, but they can look at you and tell. See, sometimes, when people ask you how you're doing, you can give that church answer, I'm blessed and highly favored. You can always tell when folks got, the answer down pat because they say it before you ask the question. You say, hi, how, and they say, I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm serving the Lord. I ain't got tired yet. And here it is. Sometimes it is the people that are closest to you that can tell without saying anything something wrong. They can tell when you have reached a point in your life where you're at a weakened moment. See, folks that are connected to you don't have to ask. They already know. But if you are disconnected from everybody, it's a lonely road ahead. And sometimes when it could have been, you could have received some help. It seems as though if you're disconnected from everybody, that's when no help will be around. See, it's a bad thing to be in a place in your life where you need help and don't have it. Do I have any witnesses in the house? Have you ever been at a lonely place in your life where it seemed as though you were going through so much stuff, but nobody was there for you, and you start complaining within yourself? I wish I had somebody. I wish I had somebody to help me along the way. But here it is. If we don't allow people to connect to us and have people, here it is, now not just have your head, have your heart. See, there's a difference, because sometimes people, because of placement, can be next to you but disconnected from you. But there's a group of people that God would allow you to have along the way that not just have what you have in your head, but have what you have in your heart. And so it's for this reason we recognize that we can't take things for granted. Now, more particularly, I want to talk to the leadership of the church, not this church, but the leadership of the church globally, because it is for this reason that you recognize the part that you play is an intricate part, because it is not just to hold a position, but to hold up leadership. Because we're connected by leadership, it means if one falls, we all fall. If we don't learn this, we will continue to allow the church of God to continue to fall. When it is that everybody places all of their faith in man, what you will find out is every time we build man up, the enemy has a way of tearing him down. So we've got to not lift man up, but lift up God through man. So now what we find is if we learn this principle of lifting God up through who God puts in leadership, then the church won't resemble the world. How is it within the same week somebody that was a world leader stepped down at the same time as a spiritual leader steps down? Because what you got to recognize is the enemy doesn't just play fair. He doesn't just hit sinners, he hits the saved as well. And what you got to recognize, don't think that just because your co-worker gets hit with a problem that you can't get hit too. I know you saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost, but if it can happen to them, what makes you so special that it can't happen to you? So now what you find is that God says, I've got to show you how to make a pyramid. I got to show you how to make a pyramid, because when I put somebody in place, I'm always going to place people there that can help him stay up. So now what we find is in Exodus chapter 17, we know that God has been using Moses in a mighty way. And it says that in verse 8 chapter 17, after Moses has just now, he has gone from complaining people. Remember last week we talked about how the people of Israel continued to complain. They said they were hungry at first, and then they were thirsty, and God became a weary land and gave them water from a rock. And so now, as they had just pleased the unpleasable people, now it says that Amalek comes to town, and Amalek wages war. He wages war among the people. And so Moses now tells Joshua, I need for you to go down and deal with Amalek. Watch this. See, a good leader knows sometimes you got to send some folks down to fight. Moses sends Joshua to fight so that Moses could go to the hill. Watch this. Sometimes you need folks down in the trenches while you go to the hills. Watch this. And it's not that you don't feel like going to the trenches, but here it is. You can't be in the trenches and on the hill at the same time. See, there needs to be somebody that's willing to fight. And see, that's what I like is whenever you know that you got some fighters in the house. The reason I got to talk to you today is because it is not a bad thing to be a fighter in the house. You just got to remember who you're fighting against. I don't have any help in the house. It's not a bad thing to have a bad temper. Sometimes you need a thug in the house, because every now and then you need to show the enemy we ain't never scared. We need somebody that's gonna ride or die. I mean, whatever we got to do, we down. The word Amalek means in the valley. You need some folks to go fight in the valley while you have a hilltop experience. Because there's some people, here it is, that's going through some everyday fight. What have folks in the house? That every day is something, every day is going through something Monday and something else come up Tuesday, and Wednesday you deal with something else, and Thursday here your co-workers, and Friday the kids go crazy. crazy and Saturday your lights, gas, and everything else get cut off. Every day I'm shuffling. Every day I'm shuffling something in my life. So I need somebody down in the trenches to help with the fight. Then Moses takes Aaron and Hur up to the top of the hill. Watch what the Bible says. The Bible says that when Moses goes to the top of the hill and he lifts his hands, as long as Moses' hands stayed up, the people prevailed. But when Moses' hands went down, then Amalek prevailed. First thing you got to recognize in order to know when you wage in war is there has to be some recognition. Has to be recognition. Here it is. When it was, though Joshua was fighting in the trenches, they weren't winning based on Joshua. Here it is. They were winning when Moses lifted his hands. Here it is. Look at the dynamic. Joshua is down fighting, but they wouldn't win until Moses lifted his hands. And you got to recognize, though you play an intricate part in the process, you got to recognize who God is using. A few days ago, those of you who are basketball fans were all in an uproar because the Los Angeles Lakers had proposed a trade for Paul Gasol and Lamar Odom to get Chris Paul from New Orleans. Y'all remember that? Y'all saw that? Everybody was excited because Chris Paul is one of the greatest point guards in the league, and he was going to play with Kobe, and it was going to be a wonderful thing. And everybody was talking about how the trade was going to make it better and all of this. But then the same day that everybody was excited, everybody became upset because David Stern, who was the president of the Basketball Association, said he was going to cancel the trade. So they said, now how in the world can you cancel that trade? You don't have that right to cancel that trade. Everybody else is doing it. And what David Stern said, he said, is Chris Paul is more than just a basketball player. He said, for the city of New Orleans, a city that has no hope, a city that has been through a whole lot, he is, watch this, he represents what the city holds on to. And so to lose the one that the city is holding on to would not just devastate a team, but a whole city. So watch this. So David Stern, who was over the National Basketball Association, put a franchise tag on him. Here it is. Franchise means that everybody leans on him. And what you got to recognize is you can't hate on somebody when they're a franchise player. I don't have any help in the house. When you recognize who really runs the thing, when you recognize who it's based off of, you can't talk about it don't take all that. Here it is. When you recognize that a lot of things that look on the surface like it's a good idea sometimes isn't a God idea. Watch this. There is a difference in a good idea and a God idea. A good idea is something you think about and ask God to bless. A God idea is something God blesses no matter what you think about it. Y'all hear that? It is. Sometimes you got to recognize when God has a plan and a purpose, it doesn't matter what the enemy does to it, it's always going to win. And as long as Moses held his hand up, all we did was win. And y'all got to recognize in the house is that sometimes God will show you that whenever you walk into the building, everybody's hands ought to go up and they stay there. Because when I look at it, all I do is win. Anybody know what I'm talking about in the house? As long as he lifted his hand. So the people recognized what was going on. You mean to tell me Joshua fighting hard, but no matter how hard he fought, if Moses put his hands down, we lost. You mean to tell me that all this stuff I'm doing don't matter? Here it is. It's not that it doesn't matter. Here it is. It all works together. Joshua fights and Moses' arms take flight. Here it is. So when I lift my hands, I'm not lifting them to show you that I'm somebody. Here it is. But when I lift my hands, I'm showing you that God is still able. And have you ever noticed that it is when you lift your hands that things get better? When you wave your hands, you not only serve God, notice that God, I'm trusting you no matter what we're going through, but you're telling the enemy, you thought you had me, but I got to just keep on saying bye-bye. I just wish I had some help in the house that can recognize when we lift our hands in the sanctuary, when I lift my hands with praise, things have got to change. They recognize this. See, fighting against it, what you got to recognize, fighting against it doesn't help. Or even worse, trying to deny it is even worse. You know, here it is. I hear people say all the time, and can I keep St. James from saying it? Let the rest of the folks say it. But let me let you in a little secret. Stop saying that he's just a man just like us. Stop saying he put his pants on one leg at a time just like us. Because when us get sick, us don't go to the hospital. When us get sick, we don't call on your neighbor. Here it is. When times get hard, you got to know that the same one that kept his hands up when you were down is going to keep his hands up when you're up. The same one that you continue to rely on is who God can use. What sense does it make to hate on Kobe Bryant when you ain't the star? It is. If everybody was made to be the star, nothing would get done. But the good thing is God puts everybody in their position. If we would just play our position, Joshua would have been crazy to say, well, God, I'm tired of Moses, I'm tired of fighting in the trenches. I want to go on the hill with you. It is. Joshua had a position to play. He recognized my role ain't to be on the hill. My role is to keep on fighting. Sometimes you need people down in the trenches because everybody, here it is, everybody in the trenches ain't in it for the same reason. Sometimes you need folks to keep the people encouraged down in the valley while God puts the person he wants on the hill. So it says that as long as Moses kept his hands up, that's good to know. It's as long as his hands were lifted, then they continued to win. But when he let his hands down, Amalek prevailed. When Moses lifted his hands, we overcame the little stuff. When he put them down, we fell for anything. Lifted his hands, we could conquer the world. Put his hands down, you couldn't take nothing. So it says the people recognize who really we were putting our hopes in is making sure that Moses kept his hands up. It says, after there was recognition, it says when they noticed the sequence and the series of what happens, they said, well, wait a minute. Since we don't like to lose, and y'all know how we are, we all sore losers. We don't like to lose for nothing. We ain't going to lose. I don't care if we got to cheat to win. We're going to make sure we don't lose. They said, well, hold on. If it's based on Moses having his hands up, it says, then the people went into action. Here it is. After you have recognition, then you got to have reposition. It says, then the people went and got a stone and put it under Moses. In other words, here it is. We want you to be comfortable. Since you're going to be in it for the long haul, we don't want you to have to worry about nothing. It says they went and got a stone, put it under him so he can sit on the stone. He's on the hill, sitting on the stone. And then it says, then Aaron and Hur got on both sides of Moses. And it says, and Moses' hands start getting heavy. And y'all know how it is. That's why y'all don't do it in church. Is when you lift your hands for a long period of time. After you lift your hands for a long period of time, at some point, those muscles start tightening up and your bones start hurting and fingers start tingling and your arms start throbbing. And here it is, even though you love the Lord and he heard you cry, at some point, you're going to say, all right, I didn't have my hands up long enough. And here it is, and he wanted to put his hands down. Here, let me share this with you. Moses wanted to put his hands down. Don't ever think that there's a point where your hands always want to be up. See, sometimes you think leadership is always in the mood to make you feel good. Sometimes you think it's always a good thing when you come into the house and you want to encourage people, but you got some folks that don't want to be encouraged in the house. There are times when leadership wants to put his hands down. There's some times when he wants to give up and say it ain't going to take all this. There's some times when he don't feel like making you feel happy today. There's some time, I'm talking to y'all. There's some times when he don't feel like hearing the drama today. There's some times when he wants to put his hands down. But watch this, but he had some help. I'm talking to the leadership now. He had some help that said because too much is on the line, I don't have any help in the house. He had some folks that said because the game is not going to be won through us, but if you keep your hands up, we're going to automatically win. He said what we're going to do is we're going to get on both sides of you and hold your arms up. I don't have any help in the house. See, what you got to recognize is we're not engaged in a physical war. Because in the physical war, you have to carry guns. And everybody in the house knows that because you want to be protected from the enemy, you carry a gun. And that's why some of y'all got some in your house. That's why some of you got the same kind of thing in your car under the seat. Yeah. So the right to bear arms means that you have a right to protect yourself. But that's not what I'm talking about today. Our right to bear arms don't have nothing to do with a gun. But it has everything to do with the arms of the one God put in place. Because when it is that we put his arms up, we're not protecting ourselves, but we're protecting who God put in place. And is there anybody in the house that knows we got to keep your arms up? I need some help in the house. Because as long as you keep your arms up, we can do anything. As long as you keep your arms up, we can make it through whatever we got to go through. But if we allow your arms to go down, then the enemy is going to win. So I wish I had some help that said we're not going to let your arms fall today. We're not going to let your arms go down, not today. Here it is, the leadership came to the forefront and said, here it is, we're not going to hold your arms down, we're not going to hold them down, but we're going to lift them up. It says, Aaron heard, keep his arms lifted. Here it is, there is no position called the arm lifter. I'm talking to the folks that want a title. It is no position called the arm lifter. But everybody has an opportunity to be the arm bearer. Everybody has a responsibility as leaders to make sure the leader's arm never goes down. And God forbid if the leadership is the one pulling the arm down. Because you recognize in churches all over the world, one of the greatest fights is between the people and the leader pulling the arms down. But here it is, when his arms are down, nobody wins. When leaders fall, nobody wins. Everybody loses. So it's our responsibility, since we don't like to lose, to keep his arms up. If you're an usher, keep his arms. I shouldn't have to usher and preach. If you're a musician, play your instruments. Keep his arms. Here it is, I need a hands-free service. Here it is, because as long as my arms are up and my hands are raised, it says, Aaron and Hur take on the duty. Nobody asked them. Sometimes, here it is, you sitting there talking about, well, I would have done it. But ain't nobody asked me. Here it is, even worse. I saw him getting a little weak. I just was waiting on somebody to ask me. I knew that he didn't look like he felt like being here. But he didn't ask me to help him. But when you see the need, you don't have to be prompted. It didn't say everybody held his arms up. Here it is. Aaron and Hur. Aaron and Hur. Aaron and Hur. Say it with me. Aaron and Hur. Now here it is. There's going to be a time in your life where you're looking for everybody to help you. And God said, you ain't got nothing but Aaron and Hur. You got your right hand man and Hur. Sometimes, here it is, you know Aaron, here it is, Aaron we know was with Moses. Y'all know Aaron was who Moses was raising up, but we don't know her. See, and it's the people you don't know, the people you don't expect to do nothing, the people that sit in the back of the church and leave as soon as church is over. Those are the ones God can use to lift the other hand. God is not just going to use the ones that's in front, but God can use the ones that's in the back. Says, Aaron and Hur continue to lift his hands, and here it is, watch this. Now, in order to lift somebody else's hands, it means you got to lift yours too. Here it is. Here it is. So, how is it that the man of God can lift his? And you sit there with yours folded. If I can lift mine, I wonder, is there anybody in the house that can say, I can lift mine too? Because in order to help you, I got to lift mine. You can't help nobody else if you don't help yourself. When I lift my hands, all I do is win. Is there anybody that can lift your hands right now? Wave your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care. Lift your hands in the house. Lift your hands. You got bills to lift your hands in the house. Your children going crazy. Lift your hands in the house. You ain't got no job. Lift your hands in the house. Because when I lift my hands, I lift it for release. And I lift it for relief. Because God can relieve me of any pain that I'm going through. Says when they lifted his hands, it means their arms have to be lifted. And when everybody starts lifting their hands, when the people of God lift your hands and say it doesn't matter what comes our way, come hell or high water, I'm going to lift my hands. Doesn't matter what people may say about me, I'm going to lift my hands, because when we come into the sanctuary, everybody's hands ought to automatically go up. When we come into the sanctuary, it suggests that you made it through the worst attempt the enemy has ever taken on you. Is there anybody in the house that lifts your hands not to impress nobody? Is there anybody that lifts your hands not to show off in the church? But when I lift my hands, I've got to tell somebody that you don't know what I've been through. Just this week, I felt like I was going to lose my mind. I had pain in my body. Didn't think I was going to make it. But God, he kept on keeping me. And if God before me, who can before me? Is there anybody in the house that said we lift our hands in the sanctuary because God is able to do anything but fail? Do I have a witness in the house? I said God is able, and I don't